Okay, hello Ling 341. Sorry that it's taken me a while to get these videos up for you, but I want to make a short series of videos on the narrow transcription exercise, just to kind of get us all on the same page. And the way I'm going to try to approach it, so I'm going to do the usual trick here where I just randomly grabbed your transcriptions for each of the six sentences that you had to work on. And I'm going to compare them just kind of directly to what I hear in these utterances. And this is labeled as the key, and you got these responses already anyways, but there's no like absolute 100% correct answer for these because these were just sentences read out loud by my dad. So like there's, no God's eye view about exactly what he did. We're all kind of coming at it from our own perspective, and so usually the goal here is to try to talk it out and come to some sort of consensus transcription. But since we can't like interact in the usual fashion as easily, I'm just going to kind of compare what you guys did to what I hear and kind of draw attention to what's crucial in terms of the differences between my transcription and yours, so that you will know better how to do the narrow transcriptions for the next homework exercise you have to do, which is due in a couple of weeks, but also involves narrow transcriptions. So I'm going to do this one sentence at a time. I'll make a separate video for each, I think, so we can kind of focus in more detail on the specifics of each utterance, because there's a lot in here. These are just like relatively short sentences of English, but if you listen closely, there's a lot going on at a fine-grained level. And the first one of these is this press the pants utterance.
Press the pants and sew a button on the vest.
Yeah, so I've got the pitch tracker turned on here. We'll talk about that more later, but it helps you see how the pitch of his voice changes over the course of the utterance, and it kind of helps you actually also focus on like what are the most sort of highlighted or more prominent parts of this utterance. Like this particular loop-de-loop here should sound a little more prominent than the rest of it.
Press the pants and sew a button on the vest.
All right, you can hear sew a button on the vest. So it goes up for sew. So it's not actually that prominent, but that's besides the point. So what I want to focus on is kind of show you how to listen to the sort of finer details of this. So this person, we're going to look at number one here just alone. Hopefully you can see this better, but press the pants and sew a button on the vest. So all in all, this is a very good transcription. There's a few little differences between this one and what I had. So number one, good job on spotting the aspiration there at the very beginning. You might be able to hear that and press this little bit here. You can hear that puff of air. So I use the kind of retroflex loop-de-loop here, rather than the just upside down R. I encourage you to do that as well. One little distinction I have here from the candidate transcription is that the eth is transcribed as voiceless. That's why it has that little diacritic underneath there, the little circle. And that's not something you would just hear as it's going by. We'll listen to the whole thing again, or at least this part.
Press the pants.
And it just sounds like the. So, I mean, if you look at it at a very fine, detailed level and just zoom in on this, let's go out a little bit. It goes by quick, right? And you can see, like, since I'm used to looking at these spectrographic representations of speech, I can see it's not voiced. We'll learn how to do that as we go. So I wouldn't expect you to get that. So that's not a big deal if you missed it, and I think most of you probably did. So again, the goal with these transcriptions is to make sure you don't produce anything that's inappropriate for what is actually said, and this is fine. Here, if you listen to it a little more closely, you'd pick up that, or just like zoomed in on it like I'm doing here, then you'd pick up on the fact that that's not really voiced, but normally it would be. Pants, here, he really emphasizes that word.
Pants.
And it's surprisingly not as aspirated as that first press is, for whatever reason, even though he's sort of emphasizing it. So I didn't transcribe it as aspirated, although there's a little bit here, but I'm not really going to get picky about that. I will kind of explain a little bit about this pants part. So it's a really long vowel. And I think I told you in the lecture that before a nasal stop, like the N here, you tend to get nasalization in the vowels. And yeah, so this person didn't transcribe that I'd encourage you to look out for that because it's pretty common. But what happens here is the is so long. It's about a quarter of a second long. It kind of starts out not so nasalized and then becomes more nasalized towards the end. And you can kind of hear that N superimposed on top of the ah as he goes through. So I'll compare this again to this. Yeah, and you can hear this sort of a vowel difference there. So that's why I've transcribed it as kind of like two different as. I'm not going to say a whole lot more about that. I will say a little bit about the and here. So this candidate transcription has and, which is like the canonical way that we're supposed to say that word, and. But we say that word a lot in English, and it tends to go by a lot more quickly than and.
And sew a button on the vest.
So he just has it right here at the very beginning. I'll play that again.
And sew a button on the vest.
Doesn't really say it as and. I transcribed here as N and also the E as nasalized because there's another nasal right after it. And hopefully you can hear that. Sort of like he's saying the letter N. Oops, try it again. Yeah, and it sounds a little bit funny because it's coming out of that context, but that vowel's a little bit nasalized. Like that. So you can hear these things a little bit better when you zoom in, but you got to keep in mind that your mind's kind of, when you cut it out of this context, your mind starts to do some funny things with what you hear. Because usually when you perceive speech, you need that context to sort of figure out exactly how a person is saying something. So take that with a grain of salt as well, but that's where this transcription is coming from. The rest of this is looking good. A couple things here with button. Nothing wrong with the segmental transcription here. Let's see if I can find it.
Sew a button on the vest.
Yeah, so I'm not really going to add anything more to that, but
button.
Two things are
button.
Just the kind of super segmental aspects of this. So this is a 2-syllable word, button. So remember to transcribe stress on the first syllable, or transcribe stress on the stress syllable, which happens to be the first syllable here. And then the N after it,
button.
At the end of it, is
button.
Syllabic N. So there's 2 syllables, the second of which has a peak as just an N. And we can just listen to that part. Yeah, so there's no like schwa. So good job by this person by not putting a schwa there, but just make sure to remember to put that little syllabic marker underneath it. Oops, I wanted to play that again. And then here's the first syllable with that glottal stop.
But.
Might sound like the word but. With this kind of gap in the middle here, which is just the glottal stop. So he just stopped his voice briefly, stopped air flowing through his vocal folds, and you get that stop closure, glottal stop closure. Yeah, the rest of this is good. Like I said, this on has probably nasalization on that vowel, and then oftentimes when you get an alveolar stop next to a interdental fricative following it, the alveolar stop tends to be dentalized, so you can put that little diacritic there. Otherwise, I'm not going to say anything further about this. Like I said, this is overall quite a good job of transcribing it. I'll listen to it one more time.
Press the pants and sew a button on the vest.
I probably should have looked at that, but you've seen it enough times while I was playing it. So I'm going to stop there for now, and I'll talk about number 2 in the next video.